Hi, and welcome to the Selected Tech podcast, brought to you by a group of 4 MVPs doing webinars, sessions, and interviews on all things SharePoint, Office 365, and the Microsoft AI ecosystem. Their motto is learn, share, reuse. And here they are, Albert Jan, Rick, Stefan, and Tommy.
Hi everyone, and welcome to another Selected Tech episode. Today we're going to talk about the Microsoft 365 CLI. We're going to do a little bit of an intro, or actually Appy is going to do a little bit of an intro into the Microsoft 365 CLI. And we're going to talk about all the things that's possible with it, and how to use it, and how to use it in your build pipelines and getting started with it. So as usual, we're back here with the 4 of us, and let's get started.
Yeah, well, welcome. It's been a while, so let's start kicking with some demos. CLI for Microsoft 365 is a solution that you can use either in your build pipelines or on your device. And as you can see, it's an open source project. It's coming from PnP. And basically what we try to do is we provide you with a shell, a CLI, command line interface, that allows you to manage your Microsoft 365 tenant and SharePoint framework projects on any platform. So if you want to play around with it, just use Bing to Bing it or Google to Google it. And you'll probably end up either in the GitHub repo or you end up at the GitHub pages. If you go to the GitHub pages, this is basically where all the explanation is done on what you can achieve and how to get it installed. Now, installation is pretty straightforward. You do need to have Node installed. If you don't have Node installed yet, then you cannot play around with it. Now, just install Node. What I did is I created a Azure virtual machine. It's completely blank, so I haven't installed anything on it. So the first thing that we'll do is we'll just download Node, and we'll use the latest stable LTS version. Sorry, takes a second to load, and then I can, after it's finished scanning for viruses, actually execute it and install it. There, something is happening. Now, obviously, you can just walk through everything and change or configure it the way you want. All we need is just next, finished for the CLI to work. And if you are working with multiple Node versions, you could install something like NVM. It's available for both Mac and Windows, where you can run multiple Node versions simultaneously and switch depending on the needs. If you're only doing CLI on your device, then you can just stick with LTS. If you're doing SharePoint framework development as well, then it might make sense to install NVM and work with it. Perhaps that's a good session for next time, just walking through what we do with that. But for now, just the basics, next, finish. Takes a second to load, and then we're good. And if you want to know, or if you want to be sure whether it's installed, what we can do is we can start PowerShell and just say node -v to see what version is installed. And as you can see, everything went well, so it is available. That means that I can close down this window, and as you can see, installing it is either through npm or using yarn. Now, we installed Node that comes with npm, so I'm just going to do that. Copy that. And that's going to take another few seconds to install all the things that I want to play around with. So this will actually bring in all the packages that are required, all the packages that I need. And with that, as soon as it's finished, then the CLI is available for you, and you can start playing around with it.
Do you guys use Yarn or Node in your personal development, or during the day-to-day development? Yarn or Node?
Most of the things we do on our side is Node, npm. Sorry.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Same here.
And the command that you use to install is actually the same on all the platforms, or once you have the Node runtime installed?
Yeah.
Same commands.
Yeah, then all should be good.
Yep.
So let's clear everything. And what I can now do is M365 -help, or let's start with V to see if it's installed and what version actually came down the line. There, I should do M365 version. Like this. That's better. Sorry about that. As you can see, it pulled in the last version 3.4, And now, as you can see, if I'm making a typo or anything is failing, I'll just get, hey, an explanation what I can do with it. Now, as you can see, there are command groups. In those command groups, there are multiple commands that I can do. And for instance, what I could do is I could see what is available. I could play around with certain commands, and I could say, maybe I want to see all the applications that are in my tenant, or maybe I want to do things with Azure Active Directory or with SPFX. Now, the only thing is that once it is installed, you're not logged in yet. So what I could do is I could check the status, and I can see whether I'm logged in or not. But because I just installed it, it makes sense. I still have to use the login option. So what I can do is M365 minus status, and you can see it will say, hey, I'm logged out. So what I'll need to do is I'll need to log in. And what actually happens if I log in is by default, it's using device authentication. So I can use this URL, go to my browser, I can sign in, it's redirecting me. There we go. Oh, I didn't copy this one yet. So let's pick that code. It will ask me, hey, you will be signed into the PnP management shell. So what account do you want to use? Let's use my demo account. Let's provide my password. And there we go. Now I'm signed in and all is good. So if I go to PowerShell, you can see here that I'm now finished. Everything is signed in. So what I now can do is I can do M365 status again. And what it will tell me is that status is logged in. I'm connected as Albert Jan. Now we do provide different options for logging in from the CLI. So you can use this device code, and that's just interactive. It's the user context. So I will go to URL, I will specify a device code, and what I will need to do is I will need to sign in with my new username and password. What I can also do is I can specify the username and password when logging in, so it will be non-interactive. So that means that I will specify my username and password within this line that I'm typing in, making it easier to run it without interaction. What I can also do, and that's basically what we would recommend if you're using a pipeline or if you're running it in a different context, and that's using a certificate, so either a PFX or a PM file. And that means that what you can do is you can generate that certificate and use that certificate to sign in without any interaction of the user. And that's probably the way forward in your release pipeline if you're working with pipelines. Mm-hmm. Now, once I'm logged in, that means that I can actually start executing commands. So that means that I can say, I don't know, let's see, do SharePoint. So what do we have on SharePoint Online? Let's do M365 SPO. And what it will bring me is, it will bring me a subset of all commands. So what I can see is apparently I can do things around apps, I can do things around files, I can do things around sites. So let's do M365 SPO site and see what's happening in there. Then I will get commands like listing all the sites in my environment or adding sites. So what I can do is SPO site list. And that would, as it states here, list modern sites of given type. So let's do SPO site list. And then by default, there we go. I get back a bunch of sites. Apparently, I did some projects. I did some tests. I did some Contoso projects. So here you can see that I get a bunch of sites back. Now, you can imagine that you can do fairly basic commands like listing all the sites, but you can also do rather complex commands. So what you can also do, and we do have a bunch of samples around that, is bringing together or combining different commands to get some output that you might want to work with. For instance, you could delete all non-group connected modern SharePoint sites. And if you go there, there's a sample explaining how that actually works. But there you can see that what we do is we use the site classic lists to get all the classic sites. And then where we use PowerShell to actually apply some filtering. And then finally, we use the CLI again to remove this one. And we do some other logic like printing out the progress, printing out what actually will be deleted. So you can see that there are quite a few samples of linking those scripts together. And the cool thing about this is that this works in PowerShell core. So this would work on any environment if you want to use PowerShell Core, but we also have the best samples, and the best samples will obviously work on any Unix-based environment as long as you have access to Bash, which pretty much is almost always. So you can use those sample scripts to do some more complex tasks or bringing commands together. And that's basically the basics of the CLI. Now we do have a quick screenshot on using it in your pipeline. That's pretty much the same set of commands. So what you can do is, let me zoom in a little bit, you can actually execute the command line task. And within that command line task, you can use the commands to sign in, log in, and do specific actions. So here you can see that there are 3 steps. The first thing we'll do is connect to the app catalog. Then we'll uploading an app package to the catalog. And then finally, we deploy it in the tenant. Now, as you can see here, it's still using the old naming convention. So it's still using the Office 365 naming and not the Microsoft 365 naming convention, but it's pretty much the same. It's just a different prefix. It's been switched out in the latest major release. So version 3, we switched over, but if you're still on version 2, then you could still use that. It's all good, but you can use it from your pipeline to release packages.
If a pipeline works, I usually don't touch it as well. If it works,
Yeah.
touch it anymore.
The interesting part is that you need to actually install Node and the CLI on that Visual Studio Runner anyway. So we would need to update also the installation there. And I'm also seeing we're using the password normal login method, but the passwords are secured through Azure DevOps variables.
And do you have the Mac or the Linux agent? Because I've tested. I played one a long time ago. I played one about speed.
Stefan, what are we using?
I guess we're using the Windows agent.
You're installing Node. Otherwise, you would do just a bash script to install Node or install npm. It depends on what you're trying to do, whether the one is quicker or not. Sometimes Windows seems to have a slight edge, and most of the times it's the Linux version that's quicker if you're doing stuff with SPFX. But for some cases, the Windows version is a bit snappier.
For us, it's just a real great way of using the CLI for our pipelines, but also for upgrading between versions of SPFX, the commands that allow you to move projects to new versions. And I think what you told me a couple of weeks ago, that also the pure file copy command is one of those that is one of the top 3 or top 5 most recent or most commonly used commands. So copying jobs seem to be a task also.
Yeah, if you're looking at our most used commands, it's either stuff with SPFX web parts, compiling them. We do have a bunch of commands that allows you to upgrade your SPFX packages to a next version and helping you with the steps required to do so. Those are fairly often used. Deploying apps is one of the commands that's been used quite a lot. And then things around listing folders, listing files, and uploading folders or uploading files are used quite often. And that makes sense, right? It's only recent that PMP PowerShell has been available on a pure core version, available on Linux. So if you were on Linux on Mac, there wasn't really a way to interact with your Microsoft 365 tenant. And one of the things that at least I, as a developer, have to do quite often is, let's say, small migrations. Migrate, let's say, 20 files from one location to another. And obviously, we do get a better UI every now and then. But for some use cases, it makes more sense to write 5 or 6 lines to do that rather than clicking through the UI or something that takes me a few minutes.
Especially if you know already that you're gonna probably do the task 3-4 times again, meaning 20 times again during the process. So makes sense to make a short script for. I think I used it also to update property bag values when there's something like a configuration hidden in there in SharePoint, and then you just push the script and move between configuration values very easily without the need of logging in somewhere else.
Yeah, you can imagine if you're doing, if you're building flows or if you're building SharePoint framework extensions that does things on library level, that you might want to generate, I don't know, 50 demo files or upload some larger files to play around with. And well, using the CLI, it's fairly easy to just generate 50 files and start playing around with them. So we're pretty happy with the usage so far.
And I see more and more people using it like their, how should I say it, their homegrown inventory tooling, like firing up a script every Friday or every Sunday. I think very recently you added the possibility to list all the flows in a flow environment.
Yeah,
so
that's
that
correct.
You can get even an export or something like that. So that makes perfect sense. I think there is an example also in GitHub that uses Graph to even get the users that deployed those flows and their email addresses, so you can get a real inventory of who created what in your tenant. Which is it's an awesome value for a free tool.
One of the things that was recently introduced that I've used a lot is that you can now actually get all the runs for a flow. So we had a customer who hit the 2,000 item limit on their runs, and that means that all their runs were throttled, and we weren't sure what flows or what runs were throttled and how many there were. So what you can do is you can just do flow list, and you get a list of all the flows. Ooh, I'm not signed in correctly. So that's one of the things that I'll need to do first. But there we go. Then what you can do is just do the flow run and specify what flow you want to run against, and well, you get the output. Can't update Microsoft Edge. That doesn't look good. Maybe I should create a new VM.
Just don't update it now.
Yeah, let's not press that button. But that way you could do like a list and get all the flows that were, or get all the runs for a flow that failed, spit them out and either cancel them or retry them, or at least have some resemblance of how big the issue is that's on your tenant when you get throttled. So
yeah, that's
and we try to work in the open. So if you're missing commands or if you have problems with commands, just put them out there, because we were available in the Azure shell. However, that has been throwing a bug since December. So we're working hard on an update on that. But once that is back again, then you could even run it in your browser without having to do anything. You just go to the Azure shell and then you're good. Or Cloud Shell, what is it named today?
And I think with we all see a huge push from the Power Platform, and with more usage there, people will start talking about governance there as well. So those commands for flows or Power Apps will become very handy very soon, I guess.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, and some people are using it more and more and more. So
yeah, it's the same for Teams, because you can iterate through Teams and see what apps are installed in what teams. That's something that you don't get in the Teams Admin Center yet. Like you see the applications listed that are possible to install, but not which team installed what app. And with the CLI, it just takes a couple of minutes, because I think I tested it with 300 teams. Then it takes like 2 or 3 minutes to do it. But if you're doing it in a cron job every Sunday, you don't care if it takes 3 minutes or 7 minutes. It's not the problem.
Yeah, makes sense. So everything is out there on GitHub. We're doing, as far as I'm concerned, everything in the open. So as you can see, we've got issues. We use the discussions fairly often to just see what's happening, see how we're doing. We share our latest stats, so you can see that we're finally hit 1 million on the usage. So that's good. We're pretty happy with that. We are always looking to new contributors. So I think we're around 40 or 50 active contributors nowadays. But if you have any ideas, if you're missing anything, just chime in, create an issue, apply or reply feedback, discuss with us what should be the next thing, and we're always happy to work on that.
And I think you have or at least that's how I started. You have a nice category. I don't know the exact word, but something like easy starters or something like that.
Yeah, so we have a label, good first issue. And what we try to do is we try to have at least a bunch of good first issues that are not work in progress. And if you ever want to do a command and you haven't done anything with the CLI, haven't started anywhere, just pick a good first issue. And we try to make sure that there are, I'm not going to say simple commands because they're not necessarily simple, but that the process of creating content for that command or creating logic and code for that command is in that way straightforward, that we have commands that are pretty similar, or that the process of creating it, the steps that you'll need to take, are well documented. So if you go to our repository, what we do have, we have quite a lot of README content explaining what we do, how it works, how to install everything, how you can use it. And if you go to the wiki, we do have a few things like how to contribute, as well as a minimal path to awesome. So what you'll need to do to set up your development environment. And basically, if you would have a empty machine, haven't done anything with it, all the steps to start working with it are described. And for adding new commands, if it's tagged with good first issue, then all you need to do is walk through adding the command. This explains what you need to do. And again, you still need to write the code and the actual logic, but there's no things that are not described in there on how to do that. So what files do you need to create to actually create or implement a command? How do you do logging? How to do tracking? How to write your tests? That is all described in adding the command. So yeah, can definitely recommend looking at good first issues if you just want to play around with it.
And it's also a good starting place if you want to, or at least it was for me, starting really to work with the graph, really trying to understand authentication. And then when I did the first, or let's, when I started, I didn't realize that I need to write test cases as well. And then I saw, okay, no, that's not just a command. And so you really need to have the proper way of writing software. And it's really helpful to also see the process that you guys created around here.
To see how other people did it, because you can see
That's true.
Yeah, what I really liked, because I started working with it roughly a year ago, and for me, writing code in Node at that point was new. I mean, I did some SharePoint framework, and there is some Node involved in there as well. I did some TypeScript, so it wasn't like completely new, but the concept of writing code that would run on any device or on any platform was new. So that means that you'll need to learn new things and new ways of implementing content. And then it's really cool to do the things like a good first issue where you can spend, I don't know, I spent probably 2 or 3 hours on my first command, and then the basics worked. And I didn't wrote my test at that point, so it obviously took me a bit more time, but the threshold to get started was really low, at least in my experience, and we're always looking to improving that. So with that, that's probably it for this time.
Yep.
Did I miss anything?
Oh, we need to ask Waldek that. I'm sure he finds something that he wanted to add.
Probably. We can do another recording in a few weeks. We can even invite Waldek to do a demo on it.
If we still can follow along, yes.
No, we can.
Yeah, why not? It's a good idea, actually. Yeah.
Cool.
Okay, then thanks, Appie, for getting us started with the CLI. I was actually installing it, not but updating it, because also very old, it seemed.
So I did a demo on a machine, I don't know, like 6 months ago, and I spun up the machine and I wanted to do the update, and I got like a gazillion errors because it was that old and there were that many new releases of everything. And I was like, okay, I'm going to throw it away and I'm going to start over. That's probably quicker.
Yeah.
I was
Cool.
at the sample scripts. Some of them were real handy. Yeah.
Yeah, there are quite a few sample scripts out there. Let me go back. But one that I used quite often is list all tenant-wide extensions.
How do you use the script? You just copy paste them to either.
Yeah. You can just copy paste the whole script and then you're good.
Good to go. Okay.
Yeah. And depends on your tenant whether something is working or not. And something like a removed orphan site redirects, that's a somewhat larger script, but we can just copy it and see what happens.
You just need to make sure that you log in to your tenant first if your screen in your script.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think I'm already logged in for this one. I'm gonna copy it in Notepad first because I'm not want to delete anything on my demo tenant. I should be logged in now. Let's see what it does. There we go. I do get an error, but that's probably because I removed the stuff. But as you can see, it figured out that I had 2 redirect sites that should do something, and apparently I deleted them already, so that makes sense.
Cool.
No.
Cool. So that was it for today.
Yep. Thanks
Yep.
again, Appy, and hope to see you guys soon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Guys, next recording. Bye.
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 Thank you for listening. Make sure to check out the show notes at selectedtech.show to get all the mentioned references. And one more thing, please tweet about the podcast and give them a 5-star review. This really helps the guys a lot. Thank you and see you next time. Bye.